coach and also your host for today. I'm super excited, always very, very excited to introduce you to Dr. Judy Morgan. Hello, how are you? I know I jump right into it. Because I'm going to tell them something about you, but I didn't want it to be all awkward where you're just standing there. So hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm here.
Yeah, I think I've had a really crazy busy day, so I'm still kind of on that high. Yeah. So, but I learned something new about you today when I was just kind of looking at some stuff. So I didn't know you were the valedictorian of your school. Like, that's amazing. See?
I was high school valedictorian in a very small town in southern New Jersey. There's like 200 in my graduating class. But there's actually a whole story about me becoming valedictorian because
yes, I love stories.
So the school board decided in their infinite wisdom, this is not showing up live on my page. I don't know why. I'll share it later. The school board decided in their infinite wisdom, like, I don't know, 2 months before graduation, that they were going to change how you got credits for different things. So I had a 4.0. I got straight A's all through high school. I was, the typical gunner nerd. Like, I rode horses and I studied. And I mean, I was just hell bent on I was going to go to vet school. So it's like I knew I needed straight A's.
Right.
And so there was another guy in our class who also had straight A's. So we both had 4.0. And the way that they reweighted everything, because originally I was first and then all of a sudden they told me I was second. And the way they reweighted everything, they pushed me out of first place. And I'm like, well, how does this work? Because we had 9 class periods throughout the day. I didn't take lunch. In the lunch section, I took band because I was in band and I wanted to do band, but in order to
and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. And so in order to get everything else that I was doing, like my 2 languages and my sciences and blah, 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 it took all 9 periods. So I just skipped lunch and I did band during lunch. The other guy who had the 4.0 had study halls. And I'm like, how does he get more credit for sitting in study hall than I do because they decided to weight academic versus non-academic classes, and band was considered non-academic. So it got weighted lower. And I'm like, wait a minute, I gave up lunch. Like, I put in more work and you just bumped me down.
Yeah.
So my parents took me to the school board meeting and I had, my poster boards and my charts and my graphs and did my little presentation. And at the end of the meeting, they had a vote and they said, yeah, that was wrong. We can't do that. So I ended up being valedictorian, but it was kind of by the skin of my teeth. Anyway, that's how it worked out.
But that's why, I'm so glad you shared that story. And I'm also, maybe that's why I wanted to tell people about it, because we needed to get to that story, because when I introduce you, there's so much that you guys don't know how fabulous of a veterinarian she is, because she is going to stick up for what's right and what's wrong. And that was wrong. And way back in high school, she's like, and that's, I think, what your whole life has been, that just there's some things that are just blatantly right and wrong. They just are. There's no in between. It's just right or wrong. And I think I could say easily that you think that a lot of stuff in the veterinary field is wrong.
Oh, you really would not believe. So there's going to be a rant that, so yesterday was our first rant of the year. It wasn't planned that way, but the FDA came out with the DCM thing. And I was like, oh man, we just got to talk about this. And it ended up being a rant. But I have another rant that I want to talk about. And I told the person that this is about that I was going to do a rant about their case, and she didn't seem to be upset by that, which is good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I do that and clients are like, oh my God, you were talking about me, and they get really upset. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like the perfect storm that happened to you, and it really makes me mad.
Right.
So I've been invited to be on the Raw Pet Medics next Tuesday as well. And I said, oh, we're going to talk about this story because this is like veterinary medicine gone wrong in so many ways that I just wanted to pull every hair out of my head. I was like, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And I could have predicted, just looking at the client records for this 15-month-old dog.
15 months already?
15 months old. And she she contacted me and wanted a consultation because it's a dachshund. And she was like, I just want to talk about, like routine healthcare and how to prevent my dog from developing, back problems, or, what can I
Right.
do for preventative medicine and just, keep my dog as healthy as possible. And so I looked at her records and looked at the number of vaccines that have been given to this little under 10-pound dog, and the number of chemicals that had been thrown at this dog. And I said, I can't believe this dog doesn't have allergies. I can't believe it doesn't have IBD, because I guarantee it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. So I get on the call with her today, and she starts talking about all the things she wants to talk about her dog, like the chronic diarrhea that it has had for 6 weeks, the hair falling out, the itching, the chewing the feet. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So in the time between when she filled out her form and the time when she got to talk to me, so I don't know, a couple months, everything became a train wreck. And I'm like, well, of course it did. Like, I predicted it. And so when I got through the call, my husband was like, oh my gosh, that was painful. And I'm like, yes. And you heard me ranting about this when I was prepping this consult the other day. And I said to you, this dog is being set up for allergies, IBD, like you name it. This dog is being set up for a disaster.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you called it. I mean, it's just like, I don't understand why the rest of the profession doesn't see this stuff. I just really don't see it.
Yeah, I don't either. Cause I often say, my husband gets mad at me when they say this, like, I'm not that smart of a person. So I'm not like, I'm not a PhD. I'm not like, I don't have like it's not hard to see it. Like I just groom dogs, and like people bring their dogs into me and I look at their records and I'm like, oh, I can tell you where your dog's going. I can predict this. This is, your dog's going to have IBD, skin problems, ear infections, and we can go down the list. So it is frustrating. I told somebody about, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, oh, Dr. Morgan's going to be coming on Wednesday. If you want to catch us on Wednesday and we can talk about stuff. And I said, I always have to be careful when I talk to Dr. Morgan, because I always feel like I'm right on the verge of going off on a rant myself. And so I'm always like, and I want to go there so bad. And because I get so angry and passionate about it, but that's what I love about you. Because a lot of times you're like, nah, I don't want to. And yep, I'm doing it. We're going to do it.
Well, it's funny because, I've done rants for so long, and especially when I was in practice, because I would just get so upset with things that I would see, and so many consultations and things that came in that were just such a mess. And I didn't realize it, but Gwen was talking to somebody maybe 6 months ago, and she said, I get so stressed when I see that she's going on a rant. Like, I see her going live on Facebook and I tune in and she's having a rant, and Gwen's like, I'm having heart palpitations and, like clutching my chest going, oh, please, don't get us in trouble.
Right. Because that is the fear, right? Oh, is this going to be a lawsuit? How far are we going to go? I'm constantly worried about what I say, but
I've only had one lawyer send me a nasty gram. And the funny thing was, I didn't even mention the name of the dog food that I was talking about. And I didn't give names of anybody. I was just talking about a case with a breeder with a lot of dogs that suddenly got very sick with liver failure. And they were being fed this food that had been incriminated with some mold issues. Right. And so I was talking about that, and the company, because this woman had a lot of dogs, the company, somehow somebody saw it and informed them. Even though I never named names, they knew who I was talking about. And I'm like, well, you got some guilt if you know I'm talking about you and you're like, oh, mold problems, we're
like, that must be us.
Yeah, that's us. We better have our lawyer get on that.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my gosh, that is interesting. I know a lot of times they do know we're talking about them, because they know that they're putting poor quality out there. They know we're talking about them. So the hard part is making sure that the pet owners know so they can get rid of the food. Like, we're trying to get that across without.
Usually what happens is somebody will, anybody who's really concerned, they'll email me and they'll ask me what the food is. And usually I'll say, well, I don't really want to say, but if you ask me, was it XYZ brand, I can say yes or no.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, that is really good.
Because a lot of times people just want to be reassured that it's not what they're feeding.
Yeah, I think that is it. Because a lot of times they'll do that at my work. Yesterday, actually, I had a lady pull out the food that she was feeding her dog. She wanted to show me because her dog's having an enormous amount of problems. And so she pulls it out. And then I had two other people in my lobby who are also having an enormous amount of problems with their dogs, IBD, ear infections, all this stuff. And all of them were eating the exact same food. All three of them. And they were all like mouth drop. And I'm like, now you know why I fight so much, because I see this every day. So anyway, so for you, everyone who's listening, hello, welcome everybody. We're really excited about some of the stuff that Dr. Morgan and I want to talk about today. I think is going to be amazingly helpful for you. So we're going to dive into it a little bit. I just want to make sure you know, as you're coming in and you're on here, please feel free to ask any questions, even if it's not on topic. Dr. Morgan is so much better than I am at watching what you guys are saying. I don't know how she keeps up. I'm always over here going like this. But
I'm doing all my ask me anythings with my supporters because it's rapid fire. It's an hour of like, how fast can I answer questions?
Dang, you're so good at it. And for those of you who don't know, hopefully you do. I know I don't always do a giant. I feel like maybe I should give Dr. Morgan a lot more praise, because she was really, really amazing. I did want to share the valedictorian with you because I thought that was awesome. But Dr. Morgan is world renowned, and she's been just so gracious with her time and helping educate all of us. But sometimes we can't get to all of it. So one of the subjects we're going to be talking about today, I just want to make sure it gets said that she actually has a class in this that you can take on her website that you can get onto. So, but we had talked a little bit before we came on about some of the subjects that I thought we should talk about. And for me, because I see so many animals, one of the things I'm seeing a lot of, and I think Dr. Morgan agrees, is dogs being treated as, what did you say? Being treated by a piece of paper, not by the pet.
They're being treated as what's happening is the veterinarian or the owner wants to treat the numbers on the paper and not treat the animal in front of them. And so, and that's something that we talk about all the time, treating the animal in front of you. Like not saying, and this is, sort of the social media problem. Well, my dog has blah, blah, blah. And so everybody chimes in and tells you how to treat what your dog has, except they don't see your dog. They don't know what's going on with your dog. Yes, it might have worked for their dog, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. You have to treat the dog in front of you.
Yeah, I see that a lot. If anyone is following me on social media, you'll see when I only help out in 3 Facebook groups. I help out as much as I can, saving pets one pet at a time. I'm an admin for, and then there's 2 other groups that I will try to help out as much as I can. And I'm the one that always says, do you have a picture? Do you have a video? Like, I don't want people just to say this is what it is. And then you have all these people give, and I can't diagnose, but I'm not going to even give you advice if I don't see the actual pet. So I'm big on, can I see a picture? And which I think annoys people because they're like, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, I can't. Let me see the picture.
Right. Yeah. Let me give you the one size fits all for all those dogs out there that have widely different problems.
Well, here's a good example before we jump into lab work, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about, is some lab work issues that we want to talk about. But a good example is people will contact or say on social media, my dog has this bald spot on his back left leg and he's going crazy at it and this and that. And then people will start saying, change the diet, put this on it, do this, do this, do this. And the whole time I'm over here going, I bet it's a vaccine, Mark. You can't.
Or maybe it's a mast cell tumor, or maybe, who knows?
Yeah, like who
maybe
knows?
It's a thing. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm like, look, put a picture up. So it is, we do have to be careful with social media, but that is it. People will put their lab work up and then not treat the actual pets. So I see a lot of animals going to the veterinarian and getting lab work. And this was my question to Dr. Morgan to get us going on this. Is there a difference between a dog who is eating a species appropriate or a raw diet? Would their lab work be considered a different normal than a dog who's eating kibble? And maybe you can help us understand how that might be the case.
Potentially, they could have a difference because the laboratory normals that the laboratories used are based on kibble-fed animals because most animals are kibble-fed.
Right.
And frankly, there have been a few studies, but there haven't been a ton of studies on the differences between dogs and cats that eat a species appropriate, aka really high meat diet. So it's going to be much higher in protein, it's going to be higher in fats, and really low in carbohydrates. So the lab results that we're used to saying this is the normal range. And interestingly, every lab will have its own normal range. So if somebody sends me an email and says, my dog's BUN was 33 and I'm freaking out, I'm like, what lab did you use? What was the normal range for that lab? Because, and what's really funny in other countries, their lab values are totally different. Like a BUN of 2.4 is normal, but a BUN of 7.4 is sky high. And I'm like, how's that?
Wow.
Because I'm used to 31 being the upper end of normal.
It's funny because I remember when I first learned that, I thought it was just like the whole world knew like it was the same
the whole world
across
is
the whole world. It's
yeah.
crazy to think that your lab work in Europe could be normal and your lab work in, Pennsylvania could be, oh my God, he's dying tomorrow.
Right. So you have to look at what the normal range is for the particular lab that you're getting the results from. Now, I have never seen a set of lab work come in where we actually have the printout where they don't have what the normal range is on there. So that's easy. The only way you wouldn't know that is if you're just talking to somebody at the vet office on the phone and they're like, oh, his BUN was 33. That's kind of high. Well, if they say that, then say, good, what's the normal range? Because if you don't know the normal range, you don't, like, maybe 32 is the upper end of normal. Well, 33 isn't going to make me have a cow. And just, okay, great. What do I have to do?
Yeah.
And the other thing that we see really commonly is a diagnosis made off of one lab value. So for instance, raw-fed dogs, and cats, because they are on a high meat diet, which is a higher protein, higher fat diet, a lot of times their cholesterol might be a little bit higher, but their BUN might be a little bit higher because we're breaking down more protein, and BUN is blood urea nitrogen, which is the breakdown products of protein. So when we have a raw fed dog, and let's say the normal's up to 31 and their BUN comes at 33, and I know they're raw fed, and I look at their creatinine, which is kidney function. So your veterinarian might be calling and going, oh my God, he's in kidney failure. His BUN is going up. It's like, okay, well, what's his creatinine? Oh, normal's up to 1.8 and he's 1.2. Sounds good. Good. What's his urine look like? Oh, he's got a really concentrated urine. The specific gravity is 1043. Okay, well, that's not kidney failure either. So where is this dog in kidney failure? He's not. He's a raw-fed dog with a slightly higher BUN. So that's one of the things that I harp about in my lab results course is knowing what's normal and not using just one value to make a diagnosis. You have to put the puzzle pieces together. So like I evaluated one today where the owner is really concerned because the ALT, which is a liver enzyme, is marginally elevated. I think normal was 118 and it was 283. Now I know that sounds bad because it's more than double normal, but there are some values that you look at and you go, oh my God, a little tiny raise is like horrible. And there are others where you're like, meh. And that's one of those where I'm a little, eh. And the reason I was really on this one is that there were 5 liver function tests, actually 7 liver function tests on the panel. Everything else was perfectly normal. I'm like, well, the liver's doing its job. It's doing just great. So ALT is a liver enzyme that leaks when we have a swollen liver cell, or there's been any trauma or damage or processing chemicals or anything through the liver, because that's its job. So I said, well, for me, because everything else is like this dog's lab work was pristine except for this one value. And I said, well, I would put the dog on some liver drainers, use some milk thistle, some dandelion greens, whatever your favorite, drain the liver product is. And I would recheck it in 6 months, as long as the dog is asymptomatic and acting perfectly fine. And you look at it in 6 months. How's it trending? Is it going up? Is it going down? What's it doing? If you're really that person who's like, I have to have an answer, get an ultrasound, look at the liver, see what it's doing. is it normal size? Does it have any shady areas? Does it have any nodules? Does it have any sludge in the gallbladder? You know, is there something else going on that we should be addressing? If you don't feel like spending $500 to get an ultrasound right now, wait 6 months, do some of your liver cleanse, go back and look at it again in 6 months and see what the trend is doing. But when I have one value that's slightly out of whack with 5 other parameters for that particular organ function that are perfectly normal, I'm not going to blow a gasket over it.
Right, right. I had a client, this was years ago, who kept getting these liver enzymes that were showing up elevated. Dog didn't have any symptoms or problems, was eating normal, nothing. There was nothing. And she just was stressed out about it. And so I finally said to her, you know, are you giving like flea and tick medications? And she goes, yeah, every month. And I said, why don't you try this? Why don't you just stop doing that and then retest again in like 2 months and see what happens? And lo and behold, boom, done. So, and the liver enzymes after 2 months, I think it was 3 months that she went and had it redone or something like that. I think it was 3 months. But the liver enzymes, even the vet was kind of surprised. I wasn't, because I figured if there wasn't anything else. So there's so many things that can raise the liver enzymes, and people just think high. And I think vets are, it's always weird for me to say, and I think vets, because I don't include you in when I say that, like, and you're such a fabulous vet. I have to have a better word. I can't say holistic anymore because there's so many holistic vets that are not doing right. So I got to figure out a way to refer to the vets that are not, I think, not keeping up with the, I don't know what it is, but anyway, vets are at fault for scaring people. They scare the heck out of them. Like, that's it. Your dog's going to die tomorrow. Like, his liver enzymes, we need to do ultrasounds and run all these tests. And
it depends. And I guess, see, I'm not a metal personality. A metal personality is going to be like, I have to have an answer. Like, that is one number above normal. I'm going to, make myself crazy until I have an answer.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. I'm a wood personality. And I'm like, good enough. And so when I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's good enough. Everything else is perfectly normal. The dog's acting perfectly normal. Is it something we should monitor? Yeah. Is it something that we could, throw some things at to try to help? I mean, should we do some liver detox? Yeah, absolutely. Because we have, even if you're not using heartworm chemicals, flea and tick chemicals, whatever, there's environmental toxins around us all the time. And our liver is always working on doing that detox. So I'm looking in the thing here. Carol says her dog's blood work shows low reticulocytes. Well, the reticulocytes should be low unless your dog is anemic. If your dog is anemic, then the bone marrow spits out reticulocytes. So and this is the kind of stuff I go over in the lab course. The reticulocytes are baby red blood cells, and they're supposed to stay in the bone marrow until they're needed. So we don't want a really high reticulocyte number with a normal red blood cell count, because it's like, well, wait, why is the bone marrow dumping them into the bloodstream? It shouldn't be. It should only dump them in the bloodstream when the dog is anemic. So a low reticulocyte, perfectly normal, unless the red cell count is low, hematocrit is low, that sort of thing. ALT is also low. I'm assuming we're using US numbers here. And again, I wouldn't get too worried about that, but I would use that in comparison to what are all the other liver enzymes. Because if we have like a shunt and a small liver, we might see low liver enzymes, but you would expect a low BUN, you would expect a low albumin. There's so many other things that would go with it. So again, we can't make a diagnosis on one number. And then the amylase 333, I'm thinking that's low for your lab. If the dog was fasted prior to the blood being taken, which they should be, then that's perfectly normal as well. But this is the kind of thing when you talk
a perfect example.
Yeah. So when you talk to your veterinarian and they go, yeah, lab work all looks great, that's fine. And you say, great, can you send me a copy of that? And then you get it and it's got these things that are low. And you're like, well, wait a minute. You didn't talk about those being low. Well, they didn't talk about it because it's normal.
Yeah.
But for the person who doesn't know anything about what those numbers mean and why they might be high or low, then you're sitting there going, well, wait, I got abnormals. What is that? So that's why I made the course. And there's actually 2 levels of the course. There's lab value simplified, which is sort of just the easy version, which basically tells you what all the, like a amylase, what that is and what it means. HCT, what is that? What is it telling you? And then you can buy an add-on to that where I will actually evaluate your lab work. So you can send us copies of your lab work, and then I do a recorded, this is what I see, like, talk about like that one exactly. Would be something that I would, so I go through every number and go, yep, this is normal, that's great. This is normal, that's great. Oh, look, the ALT is a little high, but all the other liver enzymes are perfectly fine. And, then I would list those and what we'd be looking for. And then the other course that we have is, the expanded lab value course, which this thing's a big deal. Like, I recommend this one for veterinary technicians who really want to know what they're talking about, for veterinarians who don't feel really comfortable with clinical pathology and really want to dive deep, or for the pet owner who's like, no, I need to know all this information. Like, we have a couple of, we have quite a few followers actually who are that level of, I really want to know, and I want to be able to have that conversation with my veterinarian. Like, well, wait a minute, you told me this was XYZ, and I know that number indicates blah, blah, blah. Let's have a discussion about that. So it just depends what level you want.
Do you think that the pet owner should take the first course first? Would it help? And because the second one seems a little bit like, whoa.
The second one is a big deal. And so it really depends on what you want. Like, for the average pet owner who just wants to understand what that piece of paper means, the simplified course is fine.
Well, I think what I mean is, like, if I want to know all of the in-depth stuff, would it help me to take the first one first to lead into it? Or no, I could, either one is going to matter.
Yeah.
Just depends on how much more I want to know. Because, sometimes it's like, oh, am I going to even understand the terminology?
No, because I start at the same simplified level. Like, so even in the advanced one, it's all right. We're going to go through each one of these numbers, and we're going to talk about, or each one of those abbreviations, and we're going to talk about what that abbreviation means, what it signifies, when it would be high, when it would be low, what would cause it to be high or low, and a little bit of what you would do about that, or what testing would come after that. Like, oh, look, his alk phos is high. Well, what's that mean? So I go into all the different things that could cause an elevated alk phos. Everybody immediately says, oh my gosh, his alk phos is high, he's in liver failure.
Yeah,
probably not if all of his other liver enzymes are normal. Because, by the way, alk phos is not just a liver enzyme. It is found in the uterus. It's found in the bones. It's found from steroids. So we have to know, where is it coming from? And so then I talk about, the different ways you could find that out and further testing that could be done. So it's just more involved.
Don't you think that's part of the big picture of what you and I talk a lot about as far as what's going on with our pets, is that this stuff isn't really being taught in school on how to do critical thinking? Like, the vets aren't being taught how to, they just look at the lab work. They just go, oh, A equals B, this dog's dying. Like, it doesn't,
it's not that. So clinical pathology, I remember, it's like a logic puzzle. And I love logic puzzles. But I remember in my vet school class of 90 people, 3/4 of the people hated clinical pathology. They just thought this was torture, because it's putting together a puzzle and understanding how all the pieces of the puzzle interact with each other. And I don't know, I guess I like it because it was a logic puzzle to me.
Right.
Not everybody thinks that way. And so for a lot of veterinarians, it's not their strong suit. They don't, I mean, I'm like a lab work junkie. And the other thing is, because they're so rushed, and I was guilty of this in practice as well, that you grab the piece of paper, you've got 50 numbers in front of you, and you look for the things that are out of whack. And sometimes you'll miss one. Sometimes you go, oh crap, I didn't notice the platelets were twice what they should have been. Yeah. So sometimes it's just getting rushed. And other times it's like, if the veterinarian is calling you to say, hey, everything looks great on the lab work, nothing to worry about, not concerned, and then you get a copy of it and you go, well, now these things are out of whack, and you call them back, and now they're like, well, now I have to explain to you why that is still normal for your pet, and I already told you it was normal. It takes more of their time.
Yeah.
And it would take more of their time to tell you at the beginning, instead of it's all normal, everything looks great. Yes, but on the lab work, you're going to see the reticulocytes are low, but that doesn't mean anything. And then you have to go into that whole explanation. So a lot of times it's time management, but
Yeah.
it's also not their cup of tea.
Well,
I mean, it's a very
interesting.
important part of practice.
Sure. But it is interesting because before we came on here, we both were talking about how neither one of us care or want to do technology. And I said, remember, I said, if I cared more about it, I'd probably be better at it. Because I
Yeah.
can't, I don't have any interest in it. And I'm so thankful. So maybe it's a good idea as pet parents, when we try to find these vets, we ask them a simple question like, what do you love in veterinary medicine the most? Right? Like maybe once that's not even, that's just what's your favorite thing. And if somebody says, oh, I love looking at labs and figuring out a puzzle, then if you have a lab problem, you're like, that's the vet I go to.
Yep.
Or, I
Well,
love surgery.
and a lot of times it'll say that on their website.
Yeah.
Because we had, in one of the practices that I worked in for quite a while, one of the other doctor, so we had one doctor, his passion was surgery, particularly orthopedic surgery. I was like, great, I hate that. That's all you, buddy. And then one of the other women in the practice, her big thing that she loved was endocrinology. So give her the complicated diabetic, give her the Cushing's cases that just aren't, like anything endocrinology. She loved it. And I was like, oh my God, just poke a fork in my eyeballs. I don't want to do that. And so, but then there's me. I'm like, hey, give me abdominal surgeries. I'm all over that. Give me, and this was before I was into holistic stuff.
Yeah.
And give me the lab work and I'll be happy to, figure this stuff out and figure out what we need to do about it. So everybody has their own thing. I mean, now if somebody said to me, what's your favorite part of practice besides lab work? Obviously it's food. So
Yeah.
if you ask me that question, I would not say lab work. I would say food, using food for therapy.
Food for therapy, for medicine. That's interesting. That also leads me to another question. Do you think that food can solve all the problems?
Yes and no.
That's a loaded question. I know it is.
It is. But yes and no, because, well, first of all, there are some problems like Addison's disease. I'm sorry, the adrenal glands don't work. We better give them some drugs or they're going to die. Food isn't going to solve that.
Right.
So it can't solve all things because sometimes there's just body parts that are wrong and not ever going to work. Like the thyroid, when you have autoimmune thyroiditis, I don't care what you feed them, you killed the thyroid. It doesn't work. You got to supplement thyroid. So, but it goes an awful long way. Now, for some of the chronic, long-standing, really disastrous issues, this is where we add concentrated herbs because the herb is sort of like the food on superpower because we've concentrated it and we can give a small amount but have a bigger impact. So when you talk to holistic veterinarians who do food therapy and herbal therapy and whatever other modalities they're doing, because we have this discussion in our online vet groups, everybody will say, yeah, I start with food. But, a lot of times that's not going to be enough and I'll have to add the herbal support. And the goal is not to use herbal therapy like you would use medication. Like we have to be, and I remember having this conversation in one of my courses that I was taking, where we were talking about not trying to use herbal medicine as chemotherapy. Like, oh, well, we're not going to use chemo. So we're going to use, this super powerful herb and we're going to use it like a chemo drug. You don't want to do it that way. What you want to do is use the herb for the pattern that you're treating. And it's not like you're trying to shrink the tumor or kill the tumor. You're trying to treat a pattern, which is stagnation or blood deficiency or whatever. So we have to be careful not to take our alternative philosophies and try to wedge them into the traditional way of thinking.
Yeah. which is we're seeing a lot of that where people are just it's the same thing. They're just, instead of reaching for the drug, they're reaching for the herb without, using the actual holistic approach. So did you just read this question from Lori about, I can read it to you, my
I
Shih
haven't
Tzu?
read hers, but I read the one above it with Maggie. And Maggie, if you want to be a holistic pet health coach, you better learn that advanced course. Like,
yeah, I would say
yes, your head might explode, but if you want to be at that level where you are going to call yourself a holistic pet health coach, you absolutely need to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to that one. Now I'll read the Shih Tzu.
I could read to you. She's 13-year-old, had pancreatitis, and was also put on kidney meds to flush them 2 months ago on a raw diet. I know this dog. He's on a small batch raw diet and switched from beef to turkey, had blood work yesterday and kidney function elevated, and doctor recommended kidney diet. Lori, do you know what the levels are? Can you give Dr. Morgan the kidney levels? That might help. They suggested Hills.
So it really actually doesn't matter all that much. So he's on. So it doesn't say what raw diet he's on.
That's what I was telling you. He's on a small batch.
Small batch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know. So what we really need to know is what the phosphorus is, and we need to know, like, how elevated is the creatinine, how elevated is the STMA, how elevated is the BUN, how dilute is the urine. Like, what I'm really getting to is what stage of kidney disease is this dog in? Are we a stage 1, a stage 2, a stage 3, a stage 4? At stage 4 is when I actually do start really backing off on my protein. Certainly not to the level of what Hills would be. So thank you for not going there. I can tell you that the way that I solved this problem for Stewie, my guy who was in heart failure and kidney failure, talk about a conundrum of, which problem do you fix first? I solved his issue because I kept him on a raw diet all the way up to the end, and his kidneys aren't what killed him. His heart was the final problem. The only thing I did was I added sweet potato to his diet to dilute down the protein. Sweet potato, I don't use carbs normally, but let me tell you, I have a real newfound appreciation for sweet potatoes after going through that with Stuart. And all of my animals do what they do and have the diseases they have so that they can teach me something. The sweet potato, I used about 40% sweet potato and 60% of his regular raw diet. And that was enough to keep his levels at the level where he would keep eating on his own. I mean, I had to hand feed him his entire life. It had nothing to do with his disease. So, but it kept him eating as well as he ever ate, kept his values, not normal, but I didn't care about normal. Normal. So I've had dogs. One of my best cases was a little Cavachon that came to me, and the dog went in over 4th of July weekend to emergency in kidney failure. And the veterinarian said, put this dog down today. It's going to be dead within a couple of days. And the owner was devastated, shocked, had no clue. And she said, absolutely, I'm not going to do that. She found me and came to me about a week later. And the dog's kidney values were about the worst I'd ever seen. Like, not reversible. The creatinine was about 15. The BUN was in the 200s. I mean, this dog was a train wreck. And this was actually fairly early in my holistic career. And I said, I don't know if I can do anything for this dog, but let's give it a try. And so that one, we did lower his protein, certainly, and we did home cooked meals, certainly not to the level that the prescription diets would. That dog lived another year, and his lab values never went down. And we got a year. That's a dog that every traditional veterinarian said should be put down tomorrow. And she got a year. And I'll never forget when he passed, and I saw him pretty much every week. When he passed, she came in hysterical. She said, I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I thought he had a lot more time. And I'm like, wow, I didn't do a good job preparing you. The fact that you got a year. You should have had 2 days. So, I felt bad because I really hadn't prepared her as well as I should have, that this could be the end at any point. But
Yeah.
so, with your dog, Lori, it really is very, very important that you're treating the dog in front of you and not the numbers on the paper. So Stewart's BUN stayed around 95, 100. Like I could never get it back down. And his creatinine, he stayed in the upper twos. They never came down, but he was fine. Like the kidney failure was not an issue. So,
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Like I don't need my numbers on paper to be perfect. I don't need them to necessarily come back down. I monitor them because I kind of want to know where I am. And then I'll just modify my diet depending on that. So I don't have a problem with small batches as the base diet. Could we get into some of the issues that we see with adding carbs? Could we get some yeasty ears, that kind of stuff? Yeah, you could, but you might be at a point where you have to do that to kind of stabilize things. So without seeing, where we really are with everything, that's just kind of, oh, there we go. BUN 56, creatinine is not 56. I can tell you that. So give me a different creatinine. Phosphorus 4.2 seems happy and always hungry. Those levels don't bother me at all. I wouldn't restrict anything at this point. I need to know your creatinine.
Lori, let her know.
I wouldn't be worried. Oh,
1.0.
1.0 on your creatinine? That dog doesn't even have kidney failure. Do you have an SDMA? And do you see, this is one of those that's going to make me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that I just had her dog boards with me and he was just with me he's running around like a puppy. He's fine. Like he's 13 and a half, 14.
Oh, yeah. She said that. SDMA 17. That dog's not in kidney failure. Do you have a urine specific gravity?
It's.
I would be worried that this dog has bleeding in the bowel because that will make your BUN go up. He could have a microbleed.
A little microbleed. He's on some heart meds.
With that phosphorus and creatinine and SDMA with a BUN of 56. First of all, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't even add sweet potato. 1019. Okay, a little bit of kidney failure. It's very dilute. I would be concerned, like that BUN doesn't bother me at all, but I'd be concerned maybe, just maybe, you might have a little bit of microbleed going on. Maybe probably just throw some slippery elm on board. Interesting case.
Yeah, Lori, maybe Lori can do a consult with you. He's the love of her life. He's a little Shih Tzu named Riley. She just got this blood work back, and the whole thing. And
so I wonder if we've had an ultrasound, but happy but always hungry. The other thing you could do is you could do a stool sample testing for occult blood, just to see. Because like I have a dog, George, who has had stomach ulcers quite a few times in his life because he's a little worrywart. He's a happy, like you wouldn't know it. He's a happy-go-lucky guy, but he kind of internalizes. And so he's had stomach ulcers a couple times.
Aww.
And so he'll come back a little bit anemic and his stool looks normal. So if they're not having a major bleed, you're not going to get the dark tarry stools. I had a dog at Michigan State University. I've talked about this dog before, belonged to a veterinarian, and they kept saying that the dog was in kidney failure. And they kept trying to treat the dog for kidney failure because the BUN was so high. And they finally ended up feeding the dog a camera and sent the camera through the GI tract and discovered the stomach cancer where the dog was bleeding. And that's what was causing and I'm not saying your dog has stomach cancer because your level's not that high, but that's what was causing the high BUN. The dog was bleeding into the bowel. And like all the experts at the university kept saying the dog was in kidney failure and they kept treating the dog for kidney failure. And I'm like, doesn't have kidney failure.
Wow. It's so interesting when you think about, like I said, I just saw him. He seems fine. Obviously there could be something. She is right. He does always want to eat. When I had him with me,
interestingly, people with stomach ulcers always want to eat.
Really? That's so interesting.
Yeah, I had stomach ulcers, and you always want to eat because when you have food in there, it sucks up the acid and decreases the pain.
Wow, that's so interesting.
I know, this is cool stuff. So I would just start him on some slippery elm. That would be my son. I mean, you could get an ultrasound if you were really concerned. I'm not that worried about it. Watch him and you're getting blood work done. So just watch the red cell count, make sure there's no anemia. starting to occur. Like that's how I know with my guy, he tends to run kind of anemic.
Yeah.
So he's just always on blood tonic supplements. So
It's interesting.
somebody
Um,
wants to know about a
yeah, I was thinking about
multivitamin.
the multivitamin for a small dog, puppy and a 3-year-old. No major problems, but she's eating your pup loaf. By the way, if you guys don't know what Dr. Morgan's pup loaf is, it's another really amazing food that you can put together. I get clients all the time that are feeding these subscription foods and they try to mimic the recipe. So they'll which obviously, so they'll go home and they'll be like, I could just make that as in my kitchen. So they make it in their kitchen, but their dogs are sick. And I'm like, look, if you want to do it, then let's just get Dr. Morgan's recipe and let's do those. Like, that's great that you want to cook at home, but don't cook that stuff.
Yeah.
That's
The pup loaf is complete and actually it is now made commercially by All Provide in Georgia, which it's available all across the U.S., but it's just really expensive to ship to the West Coast. I'm trying to convince them to get some West Coast distribution centers so that we can solve that. But you really don't need a multivitamin. I don't recommend it. If you wanted to do something, like if you were really concerned, I would do something because almost all multivitamins are meant to already be added to a complete diet. So they're not going to get you overboard on stuff. But RX Vitamins has RX Essentials, which is a whole food supplement. So something like that, I wouldn't have a problem with adding just to maybe cover some micro holes, but you really don't need anything.
D wants to know, wouldn't a dog with stomach ulcers, do the pups show blood in their poop?
No. So if it's a stomach or duodenal, so upper intestine ulcer, if they have enough bleeding, it's going to show up as dark, tarry, black, sticky stool. If we have blood in the stool, that is coming from the rectum or colon. So it's going to be large bowel if you're seeing bright red blood. So that's one of the things we look at when we have animals with diarrhea. What's the diarrhea look like? Does it have blood? Does it have mucus? Is it really foul odor? Not so foul? Does it have undigested food in it? Is it black, tarry, sticky? So, and that's another one of those, when you see stuff on social media, my dog's had diarrhea for 6 weeks. Well, what's it look like? What's it smell like?
I know. Is it even diarrhea? Is it even diarrhea? There's so many times when people are like, and then they'll send me a picture and I'm like, that looks normal. Like,
yeah. Well, so like in the Yin and Yang nutrition book, it has recipes for hot diarrhea and cold diarrhea. You got to know the difference. You treat them differently.
Yeah. It is interesting. I just had a client today tell me that her dog, she was told that her dog's temperature runs high. Okay, so it runs anywhere between like 103, I guess 102.5 and 103. So she was like, I guess that's really high. And I go, it's not that. Like, she thought they never told her what a normal temperature was for a dog. So she's comparing it to 98, right? And she's thinking, why are they saying this isn't that big a deal? And I'm like,
if I thought normal was 98, that would freak me out. So for those of you listening, normal is 101 to 102, but certainly when they're in the veterinary office and they're a little worked up, 102 to 1025 to 103. No big.
Well, what's interesting about that case is this dog, she says she has been battling skin and ear issues for years and years and years. So when you touch him, he's inflamed. He's a hot, inflamed dog. And I'm like, well, maybe that's why he's running a little higher, because his whole body is on fire. Like, did anyone, this poor woman though, she's like, oh, no one ever told me that's what I thought. I was freaking out. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't tell you that. I don't know. It's almost like they want to keep you in that state of constant concern instead of putting the fire out, so to speak, so that you can communicate better. Lori wants to know, are you concerned if triglycerides are high for a raw fed dog? 339.
No. And the way to battle triglycerides is to add omega-3s. And I know that seems like an oxymoron, but the omega-3s bind to where the triglycerides, anyway, omega-3s. Add more omega-3s. And if that's the same dog with the kidney issues, you should be high on your omega-3s anyway, because they're anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's any other companies. I don't know how you feel about this, but Primal makes that omega. It's called omega, and I love it because it's a whole food supplement, and it's just sardines and mussels, and it's just this omega whole food supplement that is super high in omega 3s and 6s. So it's pretty interesting because it's it's not a pill form, but it
Right.
is. It's got a lot of omegas in it, so that something like that might be a good idea to add in. It's raw.
Potentially. I'm a little concerned about Primal since they were sold. I haven't seen changes yet, but I gotta,
I'm with
it's always
you.
one that you keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine because it's in the back of my mind too. I'm waiting because I have pulled so much stuff off my shelves over the years, and my clients know I will pull it. And I know that it gets frustrating when you're on something, but for someone like you and I, we have to. That's my reputation and your dog's life. I take very seriously, so I will pull stuff, and Primal is on my list of keeping my eye out.
Yeah, we're keeping our eye on it. So the carrots in the poo undigested, I don't care how small they're ground. A lot of times carrots will show up in the poo. They are still extracting vitamin A and carotene and, some good stuff from them, even though they're not totally digesting the carrot. Ways that we could help them, because I see the same thing in my dogs. Ways that we could help them digest them if we're making our own food. If you steam the carrots and soften them, then you would get more digestion from them. But they're still getting vitamin content from them, even though we're getting the little pieces coming out the other end. But I see that as well. Like some of the base mixes have like red peppers in them. I see red peppers in the poop all the time. Like, God, they're not really digesting.
I've never seen that. I didn't know like red peppers isn't something that I eat a lot of, and my dogs just eat a lot of times what I'm eating.
Vitamin A, vitamin C, good stuff.
Yeah, I just don't eat. Maybe I should start eating more red peppers so my dogs can get some. That's how my diet gets better because, the dogs need it. I guess I should feed it. A lot of people do that. They start feeding their dogs better because their dogs need to eat, or their selves better because their dogs need to eat better. So that's pretty amazing. Do you ever think that there will be a more like, do you think there will ever come a time where you get your blood work back and it says, next to the lab work, like if he's raw fed, it's this, if he's not, it's this? Do you think we'll ever get to that point? No,
because the labs are owned by, let's see, Mars.
That's true. I always forget who's running these things.
Unless you go to a holistic, because I have seen lab reports that people get from even big corporate where it actually tells you what each one of the parameters is and what normal is. And if it's high, like I have seen lab reports that people get where it actually breaks each one down, which is amazing. We don't see it very often. And I think it's just some corporations have that plugged into their computer system for it to spit out. Maybe what you're talking about, we would see potentially down the line from more holistic veterinarians who are more into raw feeding.
Yeah. I feel like it needs to happen. It not only for pet parents and particularly for the health of the animal, but for vets to see, because they're just throwing out these answers like we're seeing with Riley right now. As you're saying, this dog he's not even in kidney failure. Like, what's going on?
Well, he is, but he's in a really early stage. Like, I'm not, because his urine is dilute, his SDMA is 17, which, normal is up to 14. So on a good day where he's really well hydrated, maybe he's 15. He's not, like, I wouldn't be freaking out about that dog at all. I'd be watching things and monitoring, because even the International Renal Society, they talk about, thank God they finally gotten on board, they talk about watching the phosphorus more than anything else. And they have actually now stated, don't restrict protein until like stage 4 or maybe late stage 3. But we have to keep the phosphorus down. And that dog's phosphorus is absolutely fine at 4.3 or whatever it was. So when you're in the later stages, you need to keep it under 6. At this but probably says something like keep it under 5. I can't remember what the exact number is. But but that dog's doing great. Like, you don't need phosphorus binders. You don't need a whole bunch of stuff. I wouldn't change the diet at this point. I would, if we don't have any kind of microbleed, I would potentially just try to push fluids a little more. So maybe add a little more fluid to the food. If you're worried about that BUN, like if it freaks you out, you could add a little sweet potato or something to dilute down the protein, but it doesn't bother me at all.
She actually, I started having, I've been having, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been having a lot of my older dogs kind of, as an example, not necessarily for this dog, but as an example, a lot of my older dogs, I've been having them, let's say they're eating 4 of the small batches a day, 4 little things. I've been having them go down to 3 and adding in some green juju and kind of balancing it out that way. And we did that with Riley as well. So we kind of moved him down a little bit, and he's been on that diet for a while where he's getting a lot of veggies and greens and that kind of thing with a little bit of green juju, I think is what she's using, has bone broth in it. And so that she just kind of did that. She just removed one of his little patties and then started adding in some green
and you want to use things that are really going to be kidney supportive. So spirulina and chlorella. And when we, from a TCVM standpoint, and we look at the kidneys, the kidneys are the beginning and end of life. So we want to feed foods that are the beginning of life. So small nuts, small seeds, black sesame seeds are amazing. You could make some black sesame seed tea and you add that into his meals. So you just take black sesame seeds, throw a quarter cup of them in a pan on the stove with a few cups of water, let it simmer for at least an hour, and you'll have this beautiful black tea. And so you can add that and the seeds, just a really good Jing tonic, which is a kidney, life essence tonic, ground almonds or almond butter, eggs, small fish. Those are the kind of things I would use for like treats for this dog. So, either the little freeze-dried minnows or sardines or some salmon occasionally, mackerel, those kinds of things, and eggs occasionally. Really, really good.
So I know we're coming up on our hour, and I'm not going to keep you super, super late because she's on the East Coast, so it's getting late out there. But Dr. Morgan, I know you do a lot of speaking all over the place, and she's just amazing. If you have not had an opportunity to see Dr. Morgan speak live, you're missing out because it's really amazing to watch. But what do you have coming up? What's going on? Where are you going to be? I know.
Oh my gosh, our schedule is so nuts. You should see I have a full wall whiteboard in the next room that is full. And I get overwhelmed if I think about it all at once. So I have to just pick one thing and go, okay, today I'm working on this. So the plan is 2 new books this coming year because I'm behind. So 2 new books in the works. One of them I actually finished writing today. So I've got my team. So that one is actually for new pet parents. It's raising naturally healthy pets.
Oh, thank you. Because this is where we have to start. Set them up.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily just puppies and kittens. It's if you adopt a senior dog or a cat or a rescue, wherever you're starting, this is how you're going to move forward. So that one's coming out first, and we're trying to have a little pet journal to go along with it to keep track of everything with your pet. And then I'm actually kind of combining these 2 books and rewriting. So From Needles to Natural was actually written in 2013, was released in 2014. And that's the one that talks about all the different disease problems that we have with our animals and how to diagnose them and how they're treated traditionally and how we can treat them alternatively. So I'm going to combine that with recipes from yin and yang for each one of those disease processes that are talked about in the chapters, but make them complete diets so that pet owners don't have to think. Because in yin and yang, we basically told you how to balance the diets, but you got to do a little thinking on your own, and people are a little freaked out about it. So I said, all right, well, I'll just rewrite From Needles to Natural. And then at the end of each chapter, you'll get the recipes that will be complete recipes for those problems. So that's in the works. I will be speaking in Tampa, Florida on March 25th. It's a Saturday, right after Global Pet. So anybody who's going to be at Global and wants to hop over to Tampa, we have a great lineup of speakers. It's a 1-day event. I will be speaking in Birmingham, England, if anyone wants to take a trip to the UK with us on May 7th. That's a great speaker lineup. I'm so excited
That's
about
my
that.
birthday weekend. Maybe I'll need to go
Whoa,
there.
come join us. Come join us. We actually, my mom's going, my husband's going, Jim and Teresa Carpenter, who are good friends, and she helps us out with blogs
Hugh's
and things.
going.
Yeah, we're all
I
going.
love him.
And you know what? I invited Gwen to go, and she said, "Oh, I'll be at Emily's wedding in Italy that weekend." Emily's one of my employees. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay, the two of you are going to be in Italy and we're all going to be in the UK. Who's in the office?
yeah, I was just gonna say you guys are both. Oh my. Well, I guess that's where you close down.
So, well, now it'll be fine. We have others there.
Yeah.
And then let's see, what else do we have going on? We're looking at another, instead of doing an online summit in November, we're looking at making a 3-day in-person summit. I will be speaking at the Spaws event, September 30th, October 1st-ish.
Yep. That's a ways away.
I don't know.
I love the live events. Like if you're gonna do
I
a live
love
summit,
live events. I'm so happy to get back out. And so actually Krista Karpowicz from Wag Out Loud has started working with us, and she is actually working on booking sort of a speaking tour. So anyone who has a pet store, training, whatever you are, whatever your pet business is, if you want to host a live event, Krista has the recipe for how to do that and can walk you through what you need to do if you want us to come speak, whether you want it to be a big event, a small event. I know that at least Gwen, maybe me, will be at the Albany Healthy Dog Expo that Lori Koger puts on. And I don't know what else is on for the year. I mean, we have so much stuff every month. We have a focus week. I know January's focus week on social media at the end of the month is going to be on spay, neuter, timing, alternatives, whether you should, whether you shouldn't, when you should, how you can sterilize without losing the hormonal input. So that'll be a special focus week. And
I saw that. I was like, yes, we need to.
I do believe our hospice course will be released in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We're finally there.
That's a really good one. I just started doing a little bit of rescue with a rescue group, and I have a very old dog with me right now. So yeah. And Michelle from Monkey's House is just so fabulous. So I'm sure you guys are doing something together because she's just been amazing. But
it's together.
But I have to say, just really, I noticed when you said if you just have a small event you want to put together, Dr. Morgan, you are just such a blessing to have, because people like me who have these pet stores and we want to educate people, it's very hard because we battle constantly that we're not veterinarians. And so to have the support from you to all of us who are out there begging people to listen to us, but we struggle. It's just so fabulous to have a vet go, no, they're not crazy. You're not listening. Like, they're not, and I know it's a fine line. Like I always have to tell my clients, you guys, I'm not a vet. I am not a vet. So please, when I'm asking you, like I would say to Lori right now, maybe we need to send this stuff to you and have you really look at it and really do an evaluation. So I'm not a vet, but it is such a blessing to have you support. And I learn so much from you constantly. And the fact that you're speaking all over the country and big events and little events and all over.
I'm so excited to be back on the road. Like our motorhome has sat in the driveway since the end of 2019. And I'm like, we are back on the road. I love being on the road. We finally have a decent farm sitter. So I'm really excited to get back out there. We did an event at a pet store in Myrtle Beach last year. I think we'll be going back there this year.
Awesome.
And a fairly small event, but just really fun. Like it's just so much fun to connect with people one-on-one. And even if you're not having issues with your dog, when you come to these events, because my events are not, well, like when I spoke at yours, that was a scripted sort of, but a lot of these smaller events, it's really just a Q&A. It's an ask me anything. And it's audience driven. It's whatever the audience wants to talk about. And everybody learns from everybody else's questions and what we talk about and where we kind of steer the boat. So it's never the same. So, if I'm speaking in one town and then I'm in another town 2 hours away, if you want to come, you're going to hear something totally different. It's never the same.
Yeah. And it's just, I got so lucky. I got to tell you, I remember just thinking I won the lottery when I asked you that I wanted to put this event together. I had never put event together before. I just knew I wanted to do it because I was tired of, I wanted personal contact and talk to people. And you said yes, because it hadn't been out there yet. We hadn't been out there because of COVID. And I was like, oh my God, she's got she's available. What am I going to do? I was so excited. And now it's just been so amazing. And I'm so glad to see that you're back out there and everywhere, and everybody, hopefully from all over the world that is listening to this will have an opportunity to listen to you. So it's just amazing. I'm glad you got a couple more books going out there. And it's funny because, Dr. Morgan's retired.
I put in a 12-hour day today, so 13. So yeah, so much for that retirement thing.
Right. So a lot of people don't realize this, but she did retire from private practice, but she now I shouldn't say is really making, I think, a much larger impact. I mean, I don't know.
That was the plan.
I think it's really hard when you're just in one little spot in one little town. It doesn't spread very far, but the information is so valuable. So I'm just so blessed that you are spreading this information all over the world. It's just been amazing. So thank you all so very much for being here. Your questions are amazing. They do help, like just Riley's Lori putting all of the information you guys put out there. Look how much we learned just off of that. So don't be shy when you're putting out questions there. So thank you guys so very, very much for being here. Dr. Morgan, I can't thank you enough. I really
thank you for the invitation. I always have fun.
Yeah, it's always amazing. It's amazing. Lori is behind the scenes, so I always have to give her a shout out because she's the one that's typing all this stuff. Because as I told you, I'm very bad at all of this stuff. So I just want to thank everybody and just I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Dr. Morgan, I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right. Take care, everybody.